Horses are beautiful and majestic animals, and most people absolutely adore them. Sadly though, in parts of the world, it is common for them to become caught up in traps laid by humans. When a man discovered one such trapped horse, he freed it and received the most amazing thank you ever. In Romania, the practice of restraining horses using traps that ensnare their legs is commonplace. It stops them from running off and getting lost. These traps clamp tightly around their legs and they are attached to the ground via a chain. The chain has to be very thick as horses are strong and powerful creatures, so the chances of a horse escaping once it has become trapped are very slim. One big issue is that traps cause the horses a lot of pain, and sometimes they can even permanently affect the horse's ability to walk or even move. It is a way of keeping track of these amazing animals and seems to be a widespread practice that is unregulated by the local authorities. Luckily for one horse though, there was a guardian angel out there. A man vacationing in the Balkan country was taking a steady stroll through the scenic countryside. He loved seeing all the sights that Romania had to offer and enjoyed the peace and quiet of such a beautiful place. Walking through the meadow, the man heard horses galloping and neighing in the distance. He couldn't see where they were, but it thrilled him all the same. He had heard tales of wild horses gracefully roaming the hills and fields of Romania. He couldn't see where they were, but it thrilled him all the same. But as he continued walking, he noticed something in the distance, laid down on the ground, nearly obscured by the long meadow grass. He cautiously walked towards whatever it was that was laying there, unsure of whether it was something dangerous or not. But as he got closer, his eyes widened with shock and he let out a gasp. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. On the ground was a stunning wild horse. It had an amazing coat of dark brown fur and a black shaggy mane of hair that ran down the back of its neck and along its spine. It was huge too, far bigger than the man had been expecting. There was something wrong though. The horse was breathing heavily and had a distressed look in its eyes. It flailed its legs a little as the man approached, and he heard a distinctive clinking noise. This was not the picture he had painted in his mind when he had thought about seeing the wild horses roam freely in the countryside. In fact, this was the complete opposite of what he was expecting. It was an upsetting sight, to say the least. The man looked down the horse's leg and noticed that it had a chain trap wrapped around them. The chains were so tight, they were restraining the poor horse from moving and looked incredibly painful. Luckily, the man was a trained veterinarian, as well as an avid nature and animal enthusiast, so he knew he had to help the poor horse at all costs. Pulling out his travel knife, the man started to cut through the chains around the legs of the poor horse. He could see that the horse had clearly been there for days, as he was very weak. Thankfully, the horse must have understood the man was trying to help and didn't kick or flinch as he gingerly tried to cut away or loosen the chains. The man thought back to his veterinarian training, remembering back to how to properly look after horses. One of the things that sprung to his mind was how you were able to give horses a couple of paracetamol tablets to help treat pain. In the same way that paracetamol helped with human aches and pains, it would also help with horses. The man dug into his pockets and pulled out 2 tablets, placing them in an apple that he had in his bag and feeding it to the horse, who quickly gobbled it down. As the horse swallowed the apple, the man found himself wondering how people could be so thoughtless to poor horses. These wild animals deserved love and respect, and to see one so debilitated because of human actions was beyond comprehension. The horse had done nothing wrong, and now it was laid trapped. In fact, if the man hadn't come along when he did, there was a strong chance that the horse would have died right there where it was laid. He wondered how many other horses across Romania and other parts of the world had met a similar fate. It certainly was a sad thing that weighed on the man's heart as he looked at the poor animal before him. He was determined to rescue the animal at any cost. Hoping that the horse would soon feel the effects of the painkillers, the man went back to removing the painful-looking chains as the mighty animal just laid there and let him work. Pulling one of the chains free, the man seemed content that his work was going well, but then he noticed something that truly shocked him. You see, one chain on the other leg had been on the horse's legs for so long that they had grown into its flesh. Walking in this condition would have been incredibly painful. The man knew what he had to do, though he was worried how the horse would react. He got to work taking out the chains one at a time. The obviously distressed horse started making noise and thrashing its body around slightly, but it eventually calmed down and remained still long enough for the man to get back to work. It took over a half an hour for the man to work his way around each of the back hooves, pulling out the chains as gently and gingerly as he could. The horse was clearly still in pain, but hopefully it understood that the man was only trying to help. Also, the paracetamol may have started to take the edge off of the terrible pain the animal must have been feeling. Thankfully though, the time came when everything was clear and there were no chains or barbs left around the horse's legs or hooves. It was completely free. The man rinsed the wounds with a couple of bottles of water and cleaned them up as much as he could. Despite looking nasty, they didn't look infected to the man's trained eye. Besides, horses are resilient animals though, and hopefully the wounds would remain clean. The horse let out a sigh of relief, and it seemed calm and at peace, finally free of the nasty chains that it had become entangled in. The man stepped back and watched as the mighty horse steadily got to its feet. He kept a close eye on the wounds, and he was content that there would be no lasting damage. The horse also seemed in very little pain now too, but what he did next made the man's mouth drop open in shock and brought tears to his eyes. The horse leaned down to the vet, and despite their reputation of being unpredictable and sometimes violent, the horse nuzzled his face against the man's, as if to say, "Thank you for helping me." The man let out a chuckle and stroked the horse's head, before the horse took several steps backward and reared up on its hind legs, letting out a loud and triumphant neigh. Its mane whipped and blew in the wind, and it landed back down on the ground with a satisfying thud. The man couldn't believe he was witnessing such an incredible sight, and he found himself suddenly overcome with emotion. The wild horse looked the man in the eye and seemed to give one last little nod of his head again as if to thank him for his assistance. The mighty animal then turned and started walking away across the meadow, before beginning to trot and finally breaking into a gallop as he went in search of the rest of his herd. As the man wiped the tears from his eyes, he also turned and walked away, thinking to himself that this would certainly be an encounter he would never ever forget. What do you think of this heartwarming and incredible story? How would you have reacted if you'd found a sweet, beautiful and majestic animal with its legs trapped? And would such a shocking and unexpected thank you have brought a tear to your eye too? As always, we love to hear from you, so be sure to leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below.